Now, around the time this idea was bubbling up in my mind, I took a trip to Disneyland. And since I was a kid, I've always loved the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. As I went on that ride again and again, I was really struck by the mood and the feel. How the ride starts out in the bayou and slowly takes you into towns and the worlds of pirates and caves filled with treasure. And I knew this was the feeling I wanted for my pirate game. And I went on that ride over and over again, trying to absorb everything that I could about it. Now, I didn't really have a name yet, and that really bugged me. I just called it the Pirate Game. Then one day, while I was hanging out with a friend, and he told a stupid joke. It's not even a joke. It's really just a quick one-liner. And he said it quickly, and he never said it again. He said, "Hey, welcome to Monkey Island. Grab a chimp and grind your organ." It's a stupid joke. It's a sophomoric, a junior high school joke. It's like, welcome to Monkey Island. Grab a chimp and grind your organ. But when I heard Monkey Island, I knew that that was the name I was looking for the game. I think the point is that ideas can come from anywhere. It's like you always have to have your mind open to everything that might flow into them. Now, a lot of great ideas start out as stupid ideas until they get molded and shaped. And the name Monkey Island is just one of those things. It was a crude joke an 11-year-old would tell, but there was a nugget in there. It's like, okay, so I had a name and I had a setting, and the rest is just going to be easy.
Hi, this is Brian, and welcome to Drink the Video Games. Today we are talking about a game series that has stood the test of time, giving us one of the all-time great video game protagonists, one of the best video game theme songs of all time, and some of the most beloved games to come out of Lucasfilm and LucasArts. Today we are talking about the Monkey Island series.
Hi, my name's Guybrush Threepwood, and I want to be a pirate.
Yikes! Don't sneak up on me like that.
I'm over this way.
Now, Monkey Island would go on to become a full-fledged franchise in its own right, but it all started back in 1990 on MS-DOS with The Secret of Monkey Island. So if we want to be a mighty pirate, that's a good place for us to start. In The Secret of Monkey Island, you play Guybrush Threepwood, a hopeful pirate to be. You'll have to face pirate trials, fall in love with Elaine, and go on to rescue her from the clutches of the evil pirate LeChuck at his secret hideout on Monkey Island.
When people play games, board games included, and computer games, you don't really think about the person behind it.
Ron Gilbert is another one of those people, along with Moriarty and Barwood, who create computer adventure games, story games. They make up only 1% of the very lucrative electronic games market, but it's quite a 1%.
When I did Monkey Island, the last game, it's about pirates. And I just really wanted to do a game about pirates. And the thing that was the inspiration there was Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean ride. That's my favorite ride there, as it is a lot of people's. And I've gone on that ride, and I always just wanted to get off of that boat and walk around those little scenes and talk to those people inside that ride.
After Maniac Mansion, and assisting on David Fox's 1988 adventure Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders, Ron Gilbert conceives of a new pirate adventure game and would pitch the idea to the higher-ups at Lucasfilm Games. His pitch gets broken down into some short stories, and the bosses seem keen on the idea, but the big boss, George Lucas, seemed more keen on getting Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the graphic adventure, made. So everyone take a brief pause, go make that game, then we could get back to the pirates. So when Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade releases in 1989, the path is clear for Gilbert to get to work on his next game.
Now, I spent weeks writing short stories, and I had a lot of fragments of good ideas, but nothing that really held them all together. I didn't have a main character yet, and that's something that's critical to an adventure game, since the main character is really an extension of the player. And I spent time in my office writing, I spent time at home writing, I spent time at a friend's house on the coast writing, and it was not going well. And I was starting to think that the Space Party Aliens idea was actually looking pretty good right about now. But eventually I was saved. Not a good idea, but my boss telling me that it really needed David Fox and Noah Falstein and I to make the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade adventure game. Now the movie was coming out, and for some reason the rights had reverted back to Lucasfilm, and they needed an adventure game, and they needed it really fast. And I cannot tell you what a relief that was, to be able to put Monkey Island aside for 9 months while I worked on something else. It really was a godsend.
There are a few inspirations Gilbert cites for the creation of Monkey Island: the Disney ride, Pirates of the Caribbean, as well as the 1987 novel On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers. The former giving the inspiration of the setting and quirky characters, the latter bringing a sort of paranormal slant to the game. But Gilbert knows, even with a good idea, he can't go it alone, so he enlists the help of a couple of newcomers to the Lucasfilm Games group, Tim Schafer and Dave Grossman, and the trio set to the high seas and start laying out the game. Now, having been a pioneer in creating the point-and-click adventure game genre, Gilbert had a pretty good grasp on what would work and what things he wanted to change, so the gameplay experience gets streamlined. Gone are the dead ends that Maniac Mansion players had to deal with, the possibility of your character dying is all but eliminated, and would implement for the first time a dialogue tree that would allow the player to decide what their protagonist should say.
Hi, I'm Greg.
And I'm Shelley.
Welcome to the Home Entertainment Shopping Network. We've got a great lineup for you today. Shelley, why don't you start us off?
Thanks, Greg. This lovely item is the latest and greatest graphic adventure from Lucasfilm Games. It's called The Secret of Monkey Island. Full of swashbuckling adventure and buccaneer humor, this game is the tall tale of a young man's quest to become a full-fledged pirate. I bet you're expecting to pay $129.95 for this game, aren't you? But no. As a LucasArts employee, this game can be yours for the low, low price of $69.95. Let's take a look. In this scene from the game, Guybrush crosses swords with the Sword Master in order to prove his worthiness. In Monkey Island, however, it's the sharpness of your tongue, not your sword, that defeats your enemies.
Thanks, Shelley.
The art side had evolved too since the Commodore 64 days. There was still the 320 by 200 pixel 16 color limitations of the EGA, or Advanced Graphics Adapter cards, but luckily, 1987 saw the introduction of the Video Graphics Array, or VGA card, so by 1990, most players would be experiencing this adventure with 256 colors. Plus, MIDI was the musical format of choice by 1990, so the game could not only look good with those extra 240 colors, it could also sound pretty good, cranking out that unforgettable Monkey Island theme by Michael Z. Land. Plus, as new technology blooms, a CD-ROM version would be releasing in 1992, and even a Sega CD version in 1993.
The Secret of Monkey Island, a game so big only the Sega CD could hold it. You are Guybrush Threepwood, would-be pirate. Something's afoot on these islands, and it's up to you to find out what's what. A graphic adventure game has never been so easy. Using the award-winning SCUM system, walking, talking, taking is as simple as pointing the cursor and pressing a button. The Secret of Monkey Island offers adventure gamers a new kind of storytelling experience that includes logic puzzles, complex conversations, and side-splitting humor. Available now from LucasArts Games and JVC, The Secret of Monkey Island sets new standards for Sega Genesis CD games.
So with that, Monkey Island is released into the world, garnering critical acclaim, as well as a beloved fan following. That doesn't necessarily translate to sales, at least here in the United States, but in Europe, The Secret of Monkey Island really puts Lucasfilm Games on the map. Unfortunately, the world wouldn't have to wait long for a sequel, because Ron Gilbert had already started working on one before the first game even hit store shelves. Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge, would go into production immediately following The Secret of Monkey Island, as Gilbert took the approach of, don't ask if you can do it, just do it and see what happens. Now, it's important to remember, without this swashbuckling bravery, we probably wouldn't have gotten any more Monkey Island games, but Lucasfilm Games has become LucasArts, and with the game already underway, LeChuck's Revenge is going to be the first game for the renamed and reorganized games group. The gang's all back with Ron Gilbert. Tim Schafer and Dave Grossman return to their roles, Steve Purcell is back as lead artist, Sean Turner as lead animator, and Michael Z. Land is back to do the music. But the reorganization into LucasArts has increased the size of the games group pretty substantially, so more talent is brought on board. Peter Chan and Larry Ahern come into the art department, and Shelley Day is assigned as the game's producer.
Well, trying to recreate the magic was not all that hard. I mean, it was easier, if anything. Okay, do that again, do it better for less money. It was nice, and it was more comfortable working on the sequel, I think, in a way, because we had already done it once, and we knew that we could, and we knew that the humor felt good, the style that we had gone in was good, and people had responded to it.
The behind-the-scenes engines used to make these games were being upgraded constantly in the LucasArts offices, now onto the 5th iteration of Scum. Without getting too technical on how these worked, basically the game programmers now had a way to lay out the characters, their actions, the objects they could interact with, how the backgrounds would affect the characters, and a new animation program which would allow much more detail in the character models. On the player side, that meant a better-looking, more functional game with more streamlined approaches to puzzles and dialogue actions. The iMuse music system, created by Peter McConnell and Michael Land, would be implemented for the first time in Monkey Island 2. Now the score for the game would be more complex and create an additional layer of immersion for the player. And a fancy new scanner would allow artists Steve Purcell, Peter Chan, and Larry Ahern to hand-draw backgrounds for the game and scan them in, rather than drawing them directly onto the computer.
iMuse started out as a MIDI-based interactive music system, and it eventually evolved to include sound and digital audio music, which also, in parallel with that, there was a migration away from more low-level control up to a much more high-level graphical interface for the composer. That very directly came out of working on Monkey Island 1, The Secret of Monkey Island. It was a really fun game, and there were some really cool music cues. But at that time in the industry, the tradition really was to play a cue for a minute or two, and then the player would experience a half hour, 2 hours of silence, and then you get another cue for a minute or two. And it just seemed like games could have a lot more than that. And so we made the fairly radical commitment to, quote unquote, when Monkey Island 2 came around the next year, to actually pave the game in wall-to-wall music, and in the process to make the music conform to the gameplay experience as closely as we could. And those two commitments were really the motivation behind iMuse.
Even with all the changes being made as George Lucas's software company becomes LucasArts, the game comes together quickly. Most of the team had worked on the first game, so the story and gameplay ideas fell into place fast. So in December of 1991, Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge, goes onto 6 floppy disks and heads out into the world for MS-DOS and macOS, with Amiga version coming out early of 1992. The release of Monkey Island 2 went more or less like the release of the first game. Critically acclaimed, a ravenous group of fans, but sluggish sales that were bolstered by the European market. LucasArts is ready to turn the page on Monkey Island, and Ron Gilbert is ready to turn the page on his time with Lucasfilm Games, and would leave the company in 1992. Well, now that Ron Gilbert has left LucasArts, where does that leave Guybrush Threepwood and his quest to become a mighty pirate? All I know is that I could go for a grog, so I'm going to head over to the Scum Bar and meet Michaela from Drink the Movies to help me put one together. Michaela, thanks for meeting me at the Scum Bar today for a cup of grog. Welcome back to Drink the Video Games. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. This is some bar that you have here.
Yeah, the Scum Bar. Yeah, so Scum is the name of the bar in Monkey Island, and it's a play on the name. The script creation utility for Maniac Mansion was a programming language that Ron Gilbert helped to come up with for the game Maniac Mansion, and then carried that lineage into his next set of games here, Monkey Island. So pretty much in all the games, there's a version of Scum Bar you can go to save the later games there. So I thought we'd meet here for a grog, right? I've been going through all the games. There's a bunch. There are 6 entries in the Monkey Island series, so I definitely needed a refreshment on my way to help me get through these games. So Monkey Island, Michaela, you ever heard of it?
I have heard of it.
Okay.
But no, never played it.
Okay. So Monkey Island is a pretty good game. It's really funny. It's very humorous. And the game revolves around this pirate character that you are. His name is Guybrush Threepwood. He is a mighty pirate wannabe, starting the game, and you go through and you match wits with pirates. You fall in love with Elaine, and periodically you just stumble into the Scum Bar for a cup of grog, of course, and that's what you're going to do. And grog is a pretty important part of the game. It comes into play in a lot of the different puzzles that you're doing and things like that. And today we're going to be making a historical version of a grog, which is a little rough around the edges, truth be told. But in The Secret of Monkey Island, for example, the first game, it's made with red dye number 2 and battery acid. So I think we should stick with our recipe.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, battery acid. Okay. I mean, depending on the Navy strength rum that you're going to use for this old grog, it might taste a little bit like battery acid, but I digress here.
That's right. That's right. Depending on what naval vessel your rum comes from, your mileage may vary for sure. But this grog recipe, I think, is pretty good. And I wanted to do something that was super historical. So let's start there. Michaela, you've got the ingredients with you. Would you mind throwing together a grog for everyone?
Sure. So if you have two choices. It's kind of a choose your own adventure with the old grog. Do you want this warm or cold? Now, we're going to do the cold recipe because it's hot. It's hot, and I feel like historically, this was probably served warm or lukewarm because it was out on a ship. But I tried it warm, and I got to tell you, it's better cold.
It started cold in England, and by the time they got to the Caribbean, it was
right.
hot for sure.
Yeah. So what you're gonna do? You're gonna take half an ounce of fresh lime juice. Please use fresh lime for this one because there's only like 3 ingredients in this whole thing. You want 2 teaspoons of cane sugar or demerara sugar. Demerara, if you don't know what that is, it's a freeze-dried cane syrup. So it's gonna melt really beautifully into your 1 ounce of water that you're gonna put it in. And you want to do that. You want to add the 2 teaspoons of demerara sugar or an ounce of water to your ounce of water and just stir it very gently until it all dissipates and it ends up looking like a syrup. Now, if you don't have demerara and you're not going to go get some just for the sake of this cocktail, you could use dark or light brown sugar in a pinch, and that will give you the same sort of syrupiness and sweetness that we're looking for here. But you're going to take those kind of 2-3 ingredients, you're going to add that to 1.5 ounces of Navy strength rum. Now, this is not Bacardi, folks. This is Navy strength rum. So I have, my husband's English. He has this whole platoon of Navy strength rums out there. I use Lamb's Old Navy. You could do, I think Black Seal has a Navy strength rum. Mm-hmm. It's something that's going to be higher than 100 proof. Do that at your own risk. So it's only 1.5 ounces. You're going to add all this together into a glass with some ice. You're going to stir it so that everything gets nice and mixed in. And then you're going to drink this. Now, you could serve this warm or lukewarm, but I would not recommend it. I tried it both ways, and I'm telling you from my own experience, I really think you need some of that ice melt because it is very lime forward. So
yeah, it has a very sharp presence of the lime there. You do get a nice little kick from the sugar. It is pretty good. And this recipe came to be, like I said, it's very historical because, way back in the day, they were serving rum on the naval vessels, just straight up. So let's talk about that, and then we can talk about our thoughts on the drink here. I thought this was interesting just from a historical standpoint. So Navy strength rum was pretty common on every British naval ship by, the time the 1700s roll around. They were down in the Caribbean, they started making rum, all that sort of thing. So the Navy strength rum was on all of the naval vessels, but high proof rum, not the best for your productivity, for sure. And that was part of the gig, right? You were in the Navy, you got rum every day. So what happens is Admiral Edward Vernon, who is commonly referred to as Old Grog was his nickname, he came up with the recipe, which is going to do a couple of things, right? It's going to pare down the alcohol, right, with the inclusion of the water. It's going to make the rum a little bit more palatable with the adding of the sugar, and it's going to add some lime juice, which is really good for not getting scurvy when you're on board of your ship. Right. So he comes up with this recipe in 1740, which I think makes it the oldest recipe we've done on Drink the Movies and Drink the Video Games at almost 300 years old. So that's pretty exciting stuff. So he mixes up this cocktail, and that's what they start serving. And they serve some sort of variant of this cocktail every day to British sailors in the British Navy until July 30th of 1970, when the government stepped in and said, you know what, I don't need rum anymore. We're starting to use like computers and stuff. We can get by without the rum. And they called that Black Tot Day. It was a very dark day, I guess, for the sailors that weren't going to be getting their rum fix every day. So that's where it is. And this recipe would have been very common, especially down in the Caribbean, obviously, right, is where the British Navy was going back and forth there, especially in the 1700s. So it plays a big part in the game of Monkey Island for sure. And I wanted to recapture, that essence here. Let's talk about the way that this tastes a little bit. Michaela, let's start with you. See what you think about this one.
So I have to say, this, to me, the first couple of sips are a bit astringent because of that lime juice. Now, you only put half an ounce of lime juice in it, but if you're using fresh lime, it's going to cut right into kind of the sides of your mouth. I really liked the like the Demerara sugar water mixture in this. I think it creates like a velvety sweetness, which complements rum. Rum tends to be kind of a sweeter alcohol base, and Navy strength rum is just like sweet and then burny all the way through, which is what you need. I mean, honestly, if you're out in the middle of the ocean and you could die any number of ways, I'm going to want to be a little buzzed most of the time. So I liked this. I thought that it was such a simple way to get like this freshness and this refreshing kind of mouthfeel as well, as well as almost like this is not a tiki drink, right? But because it's got the rum in it, it still feels very tropical and refreshing. And there's probably other ways that you can modernize this if you wanted to use like sparkling water instead of regular water, if you wanted it to make it even more I don't know, even more effervescent and fresh. I thought this was pretty good, but it's definitely something that you want to be ready for the lime for, because the lime slapped me in the face the first time, and I mixed it up really nicely. I was worried at first that I had not, but no, it's very lime forward. So if you absolutely hate citrus, this isn't going to be your favorite drink.
I like this a lot, actually. It is for sure. It's very rough around the edges. Like we mentioned, it's, almost 300 years old. And basically this recipe here exists to make the rum more palatable and, more productive in your system. But there was something so whimsical about drinking it. Right? It just transported you back in time to when, this drink might have been made. And I thought that was pretty magical. And you could certainly, make this with things you have on hand most of the time, really. It's not anything that's going to be out of the norm that's I have to get. You can mix one of these up, and there are plenty of newer iterations of this that, you can sip on a beach and, call a grog. But it's not this real traditional one that Guybrush was probably drinking there at the Scum Bar. So
that's right.
I think that that's going to wrap it up here for the cocktail section. Michaela, thank you so much for meeting me at the Scum Bar today. Thank you for helping me mix up a grog for everyone. I'll catch you back on Drink the Movies here later this week. But for now, let's get back to Monkey Island.
I think it's always strange when you create something and then you see, other people take it on. And I think it's true of any creative thing. It's like when you create it and you kind of push it out to the world, right? I guess it's a little bit like having a kid that you have kind of raised, and then you shove it out into the world and you cross your fingers and kind of hope that everything's okay. And I think anything creative is like that. You kind of send it out there, and the fans react to it, and the fans take it places. And in this case, people made sequels from the games, and I quite liked Monkey Island 3. I thought it was a very good game. It's not the game I would have made. They did stuff I would not have done. I never would have had Guybrush marry Elaine. I never would have done that. But so they did stuff like that. But I think it's a good game. I'm kind of happy to have that game as a part of the series.
After sitting on the back burner for a few years, Guybrush would get another chance to capture the hearts and minds of US PC gamers. Not to mention the LucasArts adventures were riding high on the success of Full Throttle. So in 1996, at the European Computer Trade Show, The Curse of Monkey Island is announced, with the third installment being headed up by Jonathan Ackley and Larry Ahern. Larry Ahern, you might remember, came into the art department during Monkey Island 2. As for Jonathan Ackley, he had been working as a programmer for LucasArts since 1993, but this would be the first time leading a project for either. Now Monkey Island, Guybrush Threepwood, Ron Gilbert, were larger than life for PC adventure gamers. How would these newcomers handle running their own game? And how would it be different than the beloved yet commercially uninspired entries that came before it? 6 years is forever in the PC video game landscape of the 1990s, after all. So for a start, we get a new character, Murray the Talking Skull. A lush, hand-drawn cartoonish art style, beautiful CD quality music from Michael Z. Land, and voices for the first time in a Monkey Island game. Dominic Armato is tasked with voicing Guybrush Threepwood, and Alexandra Boyd will be voicing Elaine, plus a host of other voice talent brings this newer version of Monkey Island to life. So how did it go? About par for the course, really. The game releases on PC-CD-ROM for Windows in November of 1997, and Mac the following year. Though the sales figures are a bit tough to pin down exactly, it seems as though the game was at a minimum profitable in the US, and a smash hit in Europe, and in particular Germany. This entry was also praised by critics, taking home Best Adventure Game in 1997 by Computer Game Strategy Plus, Computer Gaming World, GameSpot, and PC Gamer. It's also listed as the 45th Best Adventure Game ever by Adventure Gamers in 2011. Maybe the tide was starting to swing into Guybrush's favor, so LucasArts will set sail with one last Monkey Island adventure in 2000, Escape from Monkey Island.
From the personal log of Guybrush Threepwood. Sometimes when it's quiet, I can still hear the monkeys. It's hard to believe that it's only been a few years since I first washed up on the beaches of Melee Island, armed with nothing more than a goofy name and an overpowering urge to become a swashbuckling pirate. I want to be a pirate. Who could have suspected that such a humble pursuit would lead me to cross swords with the evil ghost pirate LeChuck, the slimiest slug ever to plunder the seven seas? Yarr! Yarr! And who could have guessed that my battles with LeChuck would introduce me to the love of my life, Melee Island's Governor Elaine Marley? Or that my efforts to win Elaine's hand would repeatedly drag me to the mystery-drenched shores of Monkey Island? That's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
Headed up by Sean Clark, who we've discussed previously on our episode about The Dig, and Michael Stemme, who had been a programmer with LucasArts since 1990. The game was going to look and play a little differently than the ones that came before it. In 1998, LucasArts made the switch to a 3D graphical adventure interface with Grim Fandango, and Escape from Monkey Island was going to run off of an updated version of that game engine, the Grim E engine, that had been created for that game. Beyond the graphical changes, the other noticeable change made in this installment is that Alexandra Boyd would not return to her role voicing Elaine and would be replaced by Charity James. Escape from Monkey Island releases on Windows in November of 2000, and Mac OS and PlayStation 2 in April and June of 2001. The sales, as you might have guessed, were lukewarm in the US and gangbusters again in Europe. But this time, that wasn't enough to keep Monkey Island alive at LucasArts. Escape from Monkey Island would be the last installment for Guybrush, and the last point-and-click adventure game made by LucasArts, closing a door that had been opened all those years ago by Ron Gilbert's Pirate Adventure. Now, it would be a long time coming, 9 years to be exact, but Guybrush would return again, though this time through a new studio, TellTale Games. TellTale Games was a game studio founded in 2004 by former LucasArts employees Kevin Bruner, Dan Connors, and Troy Melander. You may know TellTale Games from their episodic adventure games, The Walking Dead being the big one, but early on in the company's days, there were 2 LucasArts franchises that would help give the company a foothold in the adventure game space, Sam & Max, and of course Monkey Island. Tales of Monkey Island, to be exact.
Welcome back to IGN at E3 2009 Live. Steve is back, I'm back, Monkey Island is back. And we've got Mike from TellTale Games to tell us all about it.
How could you not be enthusiastic about that, right?
I love that. I want those monkeys.
It's called professionalism.
Absolutely. Dripping with it.
Yeah.
So we just saw the remake of the classic Monkey Island from LucasArts. Yep. You guys are doing something totally different. You're carrying the story forward into new territory.
That's right. We got Tales of Monkey Island coming out in a month. It's an all-new Monkey Island adventure, big, epic, 5-chapter serialized story.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Featuring all the characters you love, Guybrush, Elaine, and LeChuck, the Voodoo Lady, some other returning characters we won't mention to keep it a nice secret, and all new characters, new enemies, new situations, and one big, horrible, voodoo-drenched plot.
Who doesn't like that, right?
Yeah.
First imagined in 2008 with some interest from LucasArts, who was working on their own special edition of the first 2 Monkey Island games, LucasArts would help TellTale out with some guidance, overseeing the production to make sure that the games matched up in design styles. Ron Gilbert and Dave Grossman provided some guidance as well. Michael Z. Land came back to work on the game's music, and Dominic Armato reprised his role voicing Guybrush, and Alexandra Boyd would return to the franchise to voice Elaine. TellTale's entry into the Monkey Island series gets announced at E3 in 2009, and begins its release window later that year, beginning in July of 2009 on Windows, followed by the Nintendo Wii, Mac OS, PlayStation 3, and iOS. Releasing in an episodic format would mean you would need all 5 chapters to complete the game, which was along the lines of the standard distribution model for TellTale. Nintendo Power nominates Tales for Game of the Year, and PC Gamer awards it as its Adventure Game of the Year. So TellTale's adaptation of the beloved pirate is a success and opens a lot of doors for the new studio, but it looked at the time like that might be our last adventure to Monkey Island. However, a good pirate is never truly gone, and with the purchase of Lucasfilm by the Walt Disney Company, another avenue becomes available for Monkey Island to see another installment, and this time, Ron Gilbert is going to be the one heading it up, taking our adventure full circle back to its roots. In a tweet from May of 2016, Ron Gilbert lays it out. Dear at Disney, now that you're not making games, please sell me my Monkey Island and Maniac Mansion IP. I'll pay real actual money for them. Now, it would take another few years for that to happen, at least the Monkey Island part of that tweet. So January 2020 comes along, and Disney is a go for licensing the property to Devolver Digital, and Ron Gilbert has assurances that he can make the game he wants to make. Dave Grossman has signed back on for one final ride, and the pair is off and running on their new, old game.
Hello, friends! It's your old pal Stan, coming to you through the magic of marketing to let you know that your search for quality entertainment is about to bear fruit. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I just dropped the details on you without a little build-up. I want you to see the kind of fine dining establishments you'll be visiting, like this one.
Get lost.
And if escapism is your cup of flavor, you can't do much better than this exotic and extremely remote island.
Stay back! How did you find me?
Return to Monkey Island launches September 19th, which happens to be International Talk Like a Pirate Day. But you don't have to wait. You can order it right now, before it's even out. Something we in the marketing industry call a pre-order. As a bonus, I'm ready to unload this shipment of beautiful horse armor to anyone who pre-orders Return to Monkey Island. It'll look fantastic in your inventory.
Oi, you missed a spot.
I've got to go now. I've got a lot of irons and a lot of fires. You know how it is. But I'll be back to steal every scene I'm in Return to Monkey Island. I'll see you there. All pre-order customers will receive the exclusive horse armor item in their inventory. Please note that the horse armor has no practical use in-game and in no way will contribute to the gameplay, puzzles, or narrative of Return to Monkey Island.
Serving as the spiritual successor to the first two Monkey Island games, some decisions were going to have to be made. There had been 3 installments of the franchise since Ron Gilbert had parted ways with Guybrush, so they decided to follow the ongoing canon loosely, but not strictly. The game is also going to get a new art style. A more pop-up storybook look is telling the story this time, created by concept artist Rex Crowley, who had previously done some work for Tim Schafer's Double Fine Productions. Michael Land, Peter McConnell, and Clint Bajakian all come back to create the new soundtrack for the game, and Dominic Armato would again be the voice of Guybrush Threepwood. The game gets announced by Ron Gilbert on April Fool's Day, 2022, after having worked on the game in secret for the past 2 years, and would formally be announced by Devolver Digital on April the 4th of 2022. On the game's official website, it was slated as the exciting conclusion of the Monkey Island series, but the developers have said those weren't their words, so it's hard to say if we'll ever see Guybrush Threepwood again. The final chapter releases on September 19th, 2022 for Windows, Mac, and the Nintendo Switch, and with PlayStation 5 and Xbox versions coming out in November. And the game does really well, likely becoming the highest grossing game in the franchise and winning PC Game of the Year at the 2022 Golden Joystick Awards.
Monkey Island really wasn't that successful at the time. The time that it came out, Sierra was still selling 10 times as many copies as we were of anything. Monkey Island got good reviews, but it didn't get great reviews. I actually have a magazine in my office of a review of Monkey Island that came out at the time, and we got a 7 out of 10 score on that game, right? So, it's not bad, but it's not super great. And so, I think it just took a long time for Monkey Island to catch on. It was not an immediate hit.
Return to Monkey Island gave us, at least for now, one last chance at sailing the high seas with Guybrush and Elaine. A 22-year-long adventure that has captured the imaginations of adventure gamers. We've laughed at Guybrush's antics, the hilarious puzzles, seen a truly beautiful love story unfold, and clashed swords and wits with the most notorious ghost pirate of them all. The Monkey Island games were something that I knew of, but never had the chance to play until the special editions released. But being a LucasArts and point-and-click adventure kid, I was all too familiar with Guybrush and LeChuck by the time that special edition made its way to me. I remember waiting patiently each month for the next chapter of the TellTale game to drop, and purchased Return to Monkey Island on the day it released, and I can't wait to play that with everyone on the YouTube channel, so make sure you are subscribed there and go on that adventure with me. Now I want to know, what is your gaming history with the Monkey Island series? Did you play these early PC adventures? Or maybe pick up the special editions alongside the Telltale Games installment? Or was Return to Monkey Island your first foray into this franchise? And more importantly, did you mix up a grog to have along the way? Let me know down in the comments or on social media. I am at Drink the Video Games on Instagram and Blue Sky. And make sure you are following the podcast on the podcast platforms. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, drop a 5-star rating or review. It helps get this video game goodness out to more people. As for now, that wraps up this first season of Drink the Video Games, looking at the LucasArts point-and-click adventures. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in, and don't worry, we'll be back with Season 2 starting up next month. Cheers.